So we're good to go. So thank you everybody for coming, for joining us here. After the pandemic, it's great to see a full room like this. It's exciting, and we're also live streaming now. So you should ask very intelligent questions at the end here, because you'll be recorded for posterity. My name is Omri Price. I'm the managing director of Alliance for Europe. We're a non-profit that works for a more democratic Europe, building up communities, working on civic tech, running campaigns. That's the kind of thing we do. We've been convened here because of Yannis, who's written a new book on the future of Europe. We've had the conference on the future of Europe that's been working to shape a new vision. At the same time, we've seen that perhaps this new effort has not really captured the public's imagination, because we haven't really seen a lot on the public agenda as far as the conference is concerned. What we, Alliance for Europe, has been doing on this is to push an agenda of reform, of abolishing the veto, for example, in the Council, as one of the major bottlenecks for European democracy and European action. And now, more than ever, with everything that's happening in Ukraine, we're seeing that, if European action was urgent up to now, it is now ever more urgent in order to build up and keep the peaceful world that we want to be living in, and to keep on dealing with and really addressing challenges like climate change and technological development, and all of these things that are climbing ever higher on the agenda. So with us today, we have some very auspicious speakers and a venerable panel to discuss this with us. As you can see, it's quite a row of speakers. I would also like to say we have our original moderator, Inessa, who is a Ukrainian Moldovan woman, who actually was supposed to be here moderating tonight. She had to go to Ukraine, to Odessa, to get her daughter and her mother out of there, and was then delayed on the way into Moldova. That's why she couldn't come. So we then asked a range of people to step in at the last minute, and we've had amazing turnout. But I think this really underscores how we Europeans are dealing with this new reality of a war in Europe, where we have someone who had to rescue their family out of a war zone, and that's why they couldn't be here. So that really sort of puts a pin on the situation. And so we have Sandro Gozzi with us from the Renew Group, who is also the president of UEF, who's been a long-term federalist, of course. I won't go through his CV and everyone else's, because otherwise there's a lot of achievements to go through. We have Brando Benifei, who is the head of the Italian delegation to the S&D, who also has some very serious credentials. We have Esther Martinez, who is an expert on European democracy and civil society space, the director of Reclaim. We have Olivia, who is the co-president of Volt Belgium. And then we have Yannis, of course, who is the author of the new book, Time for European Federation, which you can buy at the back there. So without further ado, sorry. We also have Valeria, who is the chair of SGI, formerly known as SEEP, a very major organization, one of the social partners, and also a member of the Conference on the Future of Europe plenary. So we will have one more different insider perspective on the conference. So endless apologies, but here we go. Now we have everybody there. So we'll start with just a quick round of hot takes, if we like. What is the most important thing that the conference needs to deliver? What is the most important thing that will shape the future of Europe? Where is the big issue that we need to be watching, or the action that needs to be taken? And I'll just be a little bit strict on the timing so that we can get everybody in. So Sandra, would you like to take us away? Thank you.
No, thank you for the invitation, and bravo Yannis for your piece of work. But first of all, the conference must be kept alive and kicking until the end, because there are many attempts to empty from inside. So I would say that what we have to do It is to ensure that the conference bring a meaningful outcome. They stick to the main recommendation for reform of the European citizens. That it is an outcome without abuse. If to implement the main recommendation of the citizens, which are already basically in some field at least clearly identified, in other field they still need to be identified. To ensure the follow-up, you need political initiative, be it so. If you need new laws, be it so. If you need treaty revision, be it so. That must be, first of all, to ensure that we consider as binding the main result of the conference. Secondly, that there is a strong will to ensure a proper and prompt follow-up, and this must lead to the convening of a convention, of a new treaty revision process as well, Article 48. As soon as possible, we should prepare it, in my view, in advance, and it should be the immediate outcome of the 9th of May. And my position is that the European Parliament shouldn't delegate the responsibility of open the reform process, including the treaty revision, but should trigger the procedure of treaty revision, Article 48, as it can immediately after, in order to let the French presidency, and I hope the same current French president, to push for this.
Thank you very much. Very concise and to the point. Brando, do you want to maybe follow up on this?
Well, yes, I have to say I agree with the general point made by Sandro. I'm worried if we all agree on everything, because we need to make others agree, not us. I want to specify, however, to go on this line, that if we want to convince the others, we need to be very clear on the concreteness of what we are talking about, which means also being very responsive to also very, we can say, ideal proposals that the citizens have put on the table. The citizens' recommendations, one of them says to reopen the discussion on the Constitution of Europe, which has been quite impressive and a strong statement from the citizens, also saying we want a Senate of the European Union. You know, as many of us as federalists and pro-Europeans, we know that having a council that, as you mentioned earlier, the issue of the unanimity that is blocking, if we think on fiscal and foreign policy, it's crucial to have a proper legislative body that is not a diplomatic veto system like it is the Council today. So these recommendations are very strong. However, if we want to break the bubble of the conference, which is also, in the end, a bubble process to some extent, even if I think we succeeded in avoiding it to be a small bubble of Brussels, but at least an avant-garde of a larger civil society and citizens and national parliamentarians involved that were, I think, an important ally in this work. We need to be very concrete, and so we need to connect the opening of a convention, the reform of the treaties, with very clear objectives also on the social and economic issues. We cannot just say that we want more power for Europe or a more sovereign Europe, and we are not clear on the kind of social Europe that we want. I think that this needs to be clear in a moment where there is a lot of uncertainty on the social future of people. There is a lack of hope in front of the growing inflation, on the difficult economic situations. We need to take this into account if we want to be understood by others. But I think this is I would say what we need now. Yeah. A convention, treaty reform with a strong content that doesn't look like only a reform for the sake of the reform.
All right, thank you very much. And congratulations to the two of you on the time. Clearly, European Parliament trained some timekeeping. Valeria, would you like to pick up from this and maybe bridge it over?
Yeah, so as a member of the conference, I would have had a different answer a couple of months ago, but now that really we have the privilege of dealing with citizens directly in the conference since 3 or 4 plenaries. It was not the case before. I would say that the first duty that we all have to deliver is credibility to the citizens that have been spending their time and involvement in this process. And you can be credible only delivering clear results. There are different levels. Just to give you a bit of a background, I am not a politician. I represent an employers' organization. And we approach the conference with a very pragmatic approach, while being very close to the citizens, because we deliver service of general interest. So we know are at the local level very present, delivering healthcare, education, energy, transport, and these are all issues that have been dealt with during the conference. To give you an example of the concrete level of results, I can pick it up from the working group I am actively participating in, which is the one on healthcare. And there you have the example of all the kind of results you can get, because you go up to the treaty changes. The citizens are asking for the healthcare to become a shared competence of the union, so treaty changes. But also they ask for common standards of healthcare cross-border. For instance, creating system where people that need transplant can more easily go from one hospital to the other. And then they ask very concrete stuff like healthy food and having the Nutri-Score system being distributed all over Europe. So you see, you have very many levels, but what I am really very happy to see is that they are very firm on saying we want the shared competencies, and there are many players who are trying to discourage them to ask this. They say, okay, it might be difficult, but that's what we ask you to do. Then you, from the EU institution, have to take it up. It's your problem if you are not going to succeed, but we clearly tell you that's what we want. Yeah. And that's something that we have not seen before in the process, because they are directly in the driving seat of what the institution then will be mandated to deliver.
Yeah, no, so I think we have a nice sort of constellation of issues that are coming up here. We're talking about constitutional issues, we're talking about socioeconomic issues, and now the more sort of market economic aspects. I think maybe Esther, if you'd like to pick things up maybe from the, democracy, rule of law and so on, these sort of angles.
Because I really... Yes.
Good.
I'm good. I think we really are in agreement that we need a conference that delivers concrete results, and the recommendations are binding. I think nobody is disagreeing with that at the moment. So I will probably respond to your question on what are the big picture issues that we have to look at when talking about the reform of the system. So I think one of the things that it has striking me is that there is still a level of denial about what the rule of law crisis that we are having in Europe means for the future of Europe. And the fact that we are not addressing this seriously enough, that the only institution taking it seriously is the European Court of Justice, with the Commission and the Council essentially taking a step back. I think it's our responsibility to make sure that we put this on top of the agenda and that we don't open the Pandora box of treaty reform without really coming up with a better strategy plan about how we deal with the ongoing crisis. Because without addressing that problem, I think we are going to have a lot of problems moving forward to delivering the rest of the agendas in a credible manner. Mm-hmm. So I think from a rule of law perspective, that's how at least my organization sees the Conference of Europe moving forward.
Yeah, fair enough. So a crisis to address as well that hasn't really been high on the political agenda always. Olivia, do you want to give us your take?
Can you hear? All right. Yes, indeed. So I think we're in agreement in terms of, that the conference should deliver on results that are communicated, that are clear, that can be actioned, and I think that we're all eagerly anticipating the results coming May, and for that also we should still stand by the novelty and the promise of this conference. I think we, as and part of Volt in Belgium, and we've been following this closely from the onset, and we really see this as a very true moment in European democracy, where we see for the first time, there is an institutional involvement and also consequence that cannot just be ignored or put in the bin once the conference is over. We are taking it seriously, and we also think that the leadership that comes out of this is also will be telling also for the future of Europe. If not only the institutions take this up, but also national parliaments, political parties with any point on Europe will have to know what has come out of this conference. So for that, we really will look at the outcomes and to follow up on that. So.
Yeah. Okay. So thanks for that. I think first of all, you know, we've covered a lot. All of you have really stayed to the time. I think that given that you sort of brought us full circle, sort of back to the constitutional issues, and you know, before I give Yannis the floor, I want to just take a pin and sort of poke some holes in this, because indeed I think we are at risk of all agreeing with each other. And what I would like to throw into this debate, we can pick it up either with Yannis's remarks or afterwards, is that the entire conference, having followed it for over a year myself, or from the beginning, it seems to have been designed to be put in the bin afterwards. It seems like there are political forces who basically told us, some enthusiasts in Brussels, like, go and play with this, have fun with it, and when you're done, you know, we'll just do the next thing. You know, it's going to be written off as just another checkbox exercise. No one has really heard of it. You know, all my friends who, you know, are maybe slightly outside of the Brussels bubble don't have the slightest idea what it's about. And so the question is, how do we get this momentum? How do we get this desire to change? And I think Esther, what you put your finger on in terms of this rule of law crisis that hasn't been resolved, I think the political agenda there is similar. You know, it's difficult, so why should I deal with it now? You know, it's a long-term issue. It's not about my elections next week, so why should I deal with it? And how do we get this sort of thing that Brando was talking about, or Sandra also mentioned, is, you know, how do we get this real momentum for action where politicians feel like their backside is really on the line, and if they don't do something, their asses are going to get kicked, if I may use that expression. So that would be my sort of spark to throw into the fire. And maybe with that, I'll let Yannis tell us what his way forward is, that he's done a lot of thinking on, and then we can sort of mix things up a bit more. So go for it, Yannis.
Thank you, Omri, and good afternoon. Does it work? Yeah. Yes. So time for a European federation. That was my first instinctive thought right after the day of the Brexit referendum in 2016. And I remember sitting with my friend Christos at that time, and we said, this union is not complete. Many things are missing. We have a monetary union, but not a fiscal one. We have a Schengen space, but not really working for refugees or immigrants. We have huge debts in one corner of the union, zero deficits on the other. So we started writing our thoughts together. And those thoughts, 5-6 years later, developed and became a book that was published only a few months ago. The book argues for the creation of a federal sovereign state that would replace the 27 member states of the EU, but also the other European countries west from the Soviet Union. Why? Because the book argues that we are facing 5 existential challenges. I will mention them very briefly: food insecurity, energy independency, demographic stagnation, economic decline compared to the rest of the world, and also missing the race of the 4th industrial revolution, missing the race of artificial intelligence. I understand Mr. Benifei works on this right now. He has more to say. So we are missing the race compared to China when it comes to artificial intelligence. We're missing the race to Africa or Asia because they are they are younger. We are missing the race of food self-sufficiency because the third countries will grow bigger, hungrier, richer. They will consume more than they will export to us. About energy dependency, needless to argue right now. We all see what is going on. And also economically, we are not the richest or the strongest continent anymore in the world. China used to be 4% of global GDP in 2000. 20 years later, it's 20% of global GDP and rising. So how can we address those challenges? The best way is that we finally get united, become a sovereign state. Call it United States of Europe, call it European Federation, the name is not important. The idea is that we really get into one single power. As 27 different independent sovereign states, I don't think we can move forward anymore. I understand the realistic, the gradualist approach, meaning Europe is going to be built step by step. My feeling, and it's also argued in the book, is that every further small step is going to be a waste of time instead of a gain. The world is changing fact. History is accelerating. We can feel it. We felt it through the pandemic. We felt it through the Trump administration. We felt it through the emergence of China. We have seen horrible things happening. And on the top of everything, now we have the Russian aggression against Ukraine and also against the entire Europe. So, as a conclusion, of course, the conference is not likely to conclude that we should become a federal republic. No, it's unlikely to happen. On the other hand, the conference definitely has the opportunity to go to a more federalist direction, as Mr. Benifei mentioned, to go for a constitution or a senate. Senate is the council, let's say, in a more advanced step, meaning Senate means that every member state, we have a representation. Instead of being the council, let it be, let's say, the second chamber of the parliament. That could be a realistic, very bold, but realistic way forward. If the citizens support this, why not? We are here to help. My book, and of course many other documents produced by the Union of European Federalists, are going to be the major tool for campaigners to use it in order to move on with really a leap. We need a leap, not small steps anymore. I want to repeat again, history is accelerating. We are running behind it. On many occasions, we realize that we need to borrow altogether, as we did 2 years ago with the pandemic. We issued the first Eurobonds. We ordered vaccines together. We started discussing about a common health policy. Now we finally woke up and started discussing a common defense policy. All taboos are broken to all directions. So maybe the conference is a good opportunity. Either we move in a conservative step or in a more progressive step. My book suggests the maximalist approach, but of course, I would be glad to see even 30 or 50% of this being implemented. Still a success. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So here we have, sort of holistic call to action. I think with Alliance for Europe, what we've been doing recently together with partners like Pulse of Europe, UEF, Jeff, we have essentially designed a trigger campaign which is about ending the veto in the council. It's called No Veto. It went live today, so a shout out to Benny and George in the audience from our team. And what we would like this to do is to sort of trigger a discussion on if we really want to take action together, we need to move this thing, and for that we probably need a constitutional convention, we probably need some wider reform, but it has to be connected indeed to what people actually care about in their lives, how much taxes are they paying, what schools do their kids go to, what they're seeing on TV in terms of Ukraine and people getting killed there, which people really care about when they see it. When they don't see it, they forget it, but when they see it, they really care. So we really need to connect and anchor the reforms that we are talking about in that lived experience. And so I sort of want to bounce it back to Sandro there to kind of keep us spinning. At the end of the day, we're talking about keeping politicians accountable, and and making politicians do things, right? You've been a politician in a way. I mean, I was at the European Parliament where you were presenting the agenda of the Italian presidency and different committees and so on. So you've been in those rooms, you've been in those shoes. Brando as well, you know, in political campaigning and all that. How do you make the politicians move? What is it that you respond to if we want to push that button? If you just tell it to us from your perspective.
You wanted to make me move, or you wanted to tell me how we can move?
I think you're already moving, but how can we move your colleagues, your other guys here, or and girls, obviously, but.
It is a very difficult question. Now, in my experience, you have to bring down.
Do we have a sound issue?
Now it's okay.
Back. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. No, I was saying that it's a very difficult question. How I make my colleagues move. I got an advantage because I think I'm the few one who was working all the institutions: Commission, Council, Parliament, Committee of the Regions, National Parliament. So I mean, I play home when I talk about European politics, and many of my colleagues do not play home because many of them are at the first experience. Not all those who work in European affairs. They work in European affairs because strongly believe in that. For me, Europe is the reason why, after having done 5 jobs, I enter into politics. I enter into politics to build up Europe. It's not that I'm here because, as part of my career as politicians, there was the possibility of being at the European Parliament. I left Brussels to go with Prodi in 2006 because I thought that the best way in that moment for me to build up Europe was to try to go in a national arena and to defend European ideas, federalist ideas. But this is, I understand, this is not a better or worse path than others. This is my path. So what I do is, first of all, to be very pedagogical. In the sense that, I mean, some in politics really make a lot of confusion and they don't realize the contradiction in which they find themselves. So that is something very important. And then to try to let emerge the contradictions. Because, I mean, about those who oppose, for example, many of the proposals of this book, but also many of the proposals of the conference, there are a lot of contradictions, and the best way to make people who oppose is to let emerge the contradiction in which they find themselves. Mm-hmm. So I would say that, I mean, to answer to his difficult question, these are the best ways, in my view, the best, I mean, tools, in my view, that we have to use together with excellent proposal like the one of Yannis, on which I want to come back in the 3rd round.
Sure, sure. Does anyone else want to jump in on this from an advocacy perspective or a campaigning perspective? Yeah, bro. Sure. No. You can, whichever one you want.
Yes,
Freedom.
very briefly. I want to say that complementary to what Sandro has said, that I agree to. I think we need to create problems to the politicians that don't want to follow this path. Sandro mentioned the issue of the emerging of contradictions. We see a lot in the conference. We have seen the same politicians saying first that the citizens were to be listened to and that they were there shouldn't be a pre-cooked proposal. Then after the citizens were so ambitious, they started saying that these citizens were chosen badly and that it was not relevant, etc. Same people. Well, anyway, we have especially in my country, people that wear with the T-shirt of Putin here in the parliament, and then now they go and say that they want to save Ukraine, but whatever. So it's typical, okay? But then we need to make people see this, but also, and that's the other thing I want to add, we need to convince people, voters, public opinion, that it's in their interest that things change and that Europe gains new common powers, that there is more common sovereignty, that how we deal today, for example, on energy issues, the bills that people get, they are not effective for protecting them from the impact of what is happening around us. So those that oppose this work at European level, they are going against the daily interest of their voters. In fact, today we are in a new stage, if you look at it. No one is proposing anymore a kind of or not maybe no one, but it's really limited now, the space for those advocating for a nationalist breaking up of Europe. They instead, now the debate is all about what kind of advancement for Europe. No one says they want Europe to go back. Now everyone says it has to go on, but in what direction? This is already a step further. But then we need now to be clear, and to be clear on the fact that we want like Yannis has put in the book, a European Union that is able to deliver, has the power to deliver, and we need people to be against the kind of short-sightedness of their governments that are not willing to give more power to the European institutions, because in the end this is what will happen if we open the treaties. There will be a change of the balance of power, and that's why there is this kind of... So we need people to see this issue of power and look at their interests.
Yes. No, for example, my electricity bill just now, 2 weeks ago, went up. I got a letter from the electricity company. I looked at it, and immediately I wanted a federal Europe, because I said I'm being ripped off here and I should pay less. But you know, most people probably don't think that. So how do we get this point across? How do we connect this idea that, you know, if we get better European energy markets and better European energy altogether, people will also be paying less at the end of the day? So Valeria, you wanted to pick this up.
Yeah, not necessarily, is linked. I think really the game changer of the conference are the citizens. I want to repeat this. There are only 800, but I really think that those 800 people will very well know who to vote in the next European election, and eventually in their national elections. And this is a point I want to link with an idea that is floating. My organization is not officially supporting, we don't have a position, but I'm also, likewise Brando, one of the vice president of the European Movement International, and there we discussed several times about the need to continue the process. Even, you know, the dialogue with the citizens, irrespective of the conference in itself, but it's something that is so beneficial. Those citizens will clearly have an idea of why it will be important to have a federalist Europe and what are the added value. I'm not so sure they were so convinced and they had even an idea before, but just to give you an example, after the first plenary where there was a dialogue between the politicians and they put everything in the same slot, European Parliament, Commission and Council, and there is a very big difference between these two institutions. One girl stood up and said, I don't know what will happen here, but for sure, after these 2 days, I will know who are deserving my vote and who are not. So, you know, this is creating a very strong conscience at European level of only 800 citizens, but let's start with it.
Yeah, maybe we should get their story out there, perhaps. Yeah. So just to pick up, I'm wondering, Esther, Olivia, do you have any follow-up? I think that, bringing this kind of in terms of, let's say, Volt's grassroots activities, or Esther, from what you've seen from activists all over Europe who are on the ground dealing with rights issues, how do you make this more relevant to them? I know we're keeping up the same order as before, actually, but habits.
It's an interesting question, how grassroots movements and NGOs could pick this up. And the elephant in the room is that what politicians respond to is whether you can unseat them or not. And what we are seeing in numerous member states is that they are passing laws limiting the right of advocacy and taking political activities by NGOs. So it's a little bit tricky, and I'm coming back to the fact that as Europeans we should look at these hard issues of rights and civil liberties, so we have the space to communicate and to mobilize people, really. And this is not a given in a number of countries, unfortunately. So as Reclaim, that's what our fight is, to make sure that there is enough political space for the grassroots to be able to really campaign and hold their politicians accountable and leaders accountable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Olivia?
Yeah, I think after the conference, and there will definitely be an afterlife of this conference in terms of the expectations that have been set, and to I would also say that within grassroots movements, really to continue on the work that this democratic reform and hope for European reform will continue through pan-European events and through the grassroots initiatives, because ultimately as European citizens we have reached this conscious that you mentioned, the 800 citizens that have been participating, but I think we as citizens are also responsible for the next chapters of what we want as a political union, and for that you really need to continue demanding that change, and that will still be a work of a long marathon, but ultimately you do have to awake this this consciousness, and it's also quite telling that for the European institutions, or like the state of the European Union as we know it today, also sees like the democratic deficit also as a crisis, just as much as Ukraine is now also preoccupying, and also extremely important also how we deal with those challenges. But we also have our democratic challenges, and to develop that. So
Okay.
that's a longer thought, but
True. Yeah, indeed. I'm wondering, Yannis, what you'd like to do, whether we open it up for the Q&A and then you pick up the first question. Shall we do that? Or would you like to come in?
The first question.
No. Yes, go for it. Yeah, fire away.
A question to the two MEPs here.
Great.
Maybe to inform also the audience that there is a group in the European Parliament, the Spinelli Group. It's the MEPs who push for a clearly federalist agenda. It's an old group. I think it was formed in 2010. So my question is, does the Spinelli Group strategize? Do you have, let's say, a formulated agenda in order to follow up after the conference with a more federalist agenda? To be a little bit more precise, we're talking about the no veto, we're talking about European lists for the European Parliament elections, and of course we're talking about the two big ideas, the Constitution and the Senate.
Big one.
Yes, thank you, Sandro. But also because I apologize, I leave you then with Sandro. I need to leave earlier. I told Yannis, but I will get the chance to give an answer on this. I've been the president of the Spinelli Group in the first period of the mandate. Now we have another colleague that has taken the lead, Daniel Freund. But we built, in fact, in this in that part of the time, and now it's fully working in terms of the conference. This Spinelli Caucus inside the conference that has brought together civil society, national parliamentarians, like-minded, even council people, and has also created, I tell you, more we can say a openly federalist approach from some colleagues that were a little shyer also in the European Parliament. So it had also a pressure and a feeling of we can change things together. We are more than we think. That we believe in a more federalist agenda, and we also didn't want to call it the Federalist Caucus for one reason, because we know that federalist is one of those words like reformist or pro-European that means everything. So we is interpreted also, especially federalist is more than meaning everything. Also, it's interpreted in very different ways, also in a derogative way. So that just to go against the federalist idea. So we say it's the Spinelli Caucus. So to bring together those that want the Spinelli Ventotene Manifesto to be enacted by this conference, to become to bring it to reality finally after 80 years. And so this is a good instrument now to influence the working groups that are leading to the conference. We have people from the Spinelli Group that are working inside the Spinelli the working groups on the various topics to also like Valeria, for example, that is leading our federalist agenda there to bring more of our content in the working groups that will channel to the conference plenary the final conclusions. So it's very useful and important now for the pressure for this very conclusive but also very concrete part of the conference, the most important part, but also this work that we have done of bringing together institutions and civil society will need to continue. I think the Spinelli Caucus springing from the Spinelli Group as a future after the conference, and it needs to be a platform where we can bring more people, more movements together for pushing on the follow-up that we hope with Sandro, as he said, that can be very clear now with a path towards the convention. And Sandro was very clear in saying, I want to underline that the European Parliament has to take the lead, has not to wait and to go on. But then we need to continue. It will not end up with that. It will be still a long way. But I think we are ready to fight. To be frank, before like last mandate, the Parliament was weaker on this on many aspects also, because maybe the what happened in this period was a wake-up call. Also the conference, to be frank, has changed its nature because of the pandemic and now in this conclusive part because of what is happening at our borders. So let's take the chance now, and this is our approach, I would say. Thank you.
Yeah, very good. I mean, in our discussions, being history nerds, some of us, we've talked about the French Revolution and the tennis court oath, and how do we get people to the nearest gym or tennis court or a swimming pool or whatever, wherever the people can take oaths these days. I'm gonna open it up to the public to have a general discussion. Yeah. All right. Good luck with that. Have a more democratic future than Putin, hopefully. Yeah, and longer one. But yeah, so I think, we have Laura here from the Democratic Movement and Citizens Takeover, and I promised you the first word, so you can have my microphone. There you go.
Yeah, thank you very much. Hi, my name is Laura. I'm from Democratic Society, and I have been involved in the Conference on the Future of Europe as an evaluator, and so it's very interesting for me to hear some of your impressions as well on what you have seen on it so far. So now I kind of have a question to open up to, well, all of you, if you would like to take it. How do you think it is possible to make sure that citizens stay engaged after the Conference on the Future of Europe, given that this has been, it hasn't been the lengthiest process, but it has been quite a few months of work for a lot of citizens to stay engaged. And so to get their interests and to get their ideas going, what is the best approach to do this? Also in light of ideas moving more towards a federalist Europe. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Great, and maybe if you could just then, when the next question comes up, you can just pass it to the next person, or you can just hoard the mic and keep talking for 40 minutes, but we'll see. So I think this was mostly a question for the members of the conference, so if you wanna, pick this up in terms of how we keep these people engaged.
My experience, especially in the working group on health, but not only, is very positive. Really, I created a direct relation with those people. I know them one by one, and I think we will keep together following the follow-up of the conference also afterwards. And the dynamic is so good that they know I'm not a politician, because what is funny is that when we started this process at the first plenary, you, the politician, and I had to explain I'm not a politician, so I will not be able to be in the driving seat of what are going to be the result. But still, I think we will, they will keep close to me, because they know that they can count on me as one who followed up the process. Of course, this is a tiny example. We can't count on this direct relation for all the work afterwards, and that is why it would be really important that the famous common secretariat of the conference, which is a kind of longa mano ghost that nobody who knows who they are really exactly, create a platform for them to stay tuned on the follow-up. And I think it would be a huge mistake not to do this. If they are not ready, because there are 3 institutions together, 2 of them, they really don't want this conference at all, so maybe it's not for the common secretariat. But turning to the parliament, there is a unit, is the same unit that organized this time I'm voting campaign and all the rest. So I hope that if it's not an agreement of the common secretariat, at least this unit in the parliament will keep it alive afterwards.
Yeah. Great, thank you.
Yeah, three points. The first, for me, it has been interesting to see the absurdity of the world we live in. Because the fact that, they see me as, you are a politician. Yeah, I'm someone who has done 5 jobs. I'm a citizen. I don't fall from the sky. I decided to devote a period of my life to the public service as politician, whereas before I was a civil servant at the commission, I was a diplomat, I was a lawyer, I was a professor in university. The fact that once that you decide to put a part of your life at the service of the public, of the public interest, you have seen as someone who is always ready to manipulate people, to do things beyond. That's the sign of the crisis you are living in. And the fact that we have to build up this confidence process with citizens constantly, it's not my fault, it's not their fault, it's the fault of people who in my job have done things that should have done, it's the fault of citizens who are very open to buy populistic and demagogical discourse. But that's something that we have to address. It is a lengthy process that we have to address in our society, because we have to rebuild up a confidence process. And we are all citizens. At the point. So this is the consideration. I really don't buy this argument, and I got strong arguments to show that I shouldn't buy this argument. The second point is that the weakness of this conference and the weakness of these 800 citizens, and I'm saying it because we are in the press club, is that nobody speaks about this exercise. And there again, the other time I was in Paris at in a debate, a Franco-Italian debate, and basically many of the questions were, mais on sait pas, on sait rien de ça. We don't know anything about that. To me, I said, listen, talk to the press, talk to the journal. There is another issue. But why someone who is in institution, is politics, must always be held accountable for the job that others should do and they don't do? It is the media who should inform the fact that it is an unprecedented process, that 800 people selected randomly from 27 countries spend their weekend talking about the future of Europe. Why they don't come with a camera and asking to the bank employee from Estonia, Mrs. Whatever, what do you do here? Why did you accept to join this exercise? What do you expect from Europe? Why they don't do this? Am I responsible for that? We are fighting. I've been saying since the very beginning. I've been trying to explain to the press. That is another part of our society problems. And I don't think that we can solve everything, but I see that this conference is interesting because it is also open the light on fundamental problems that we have in our societies. The first, the need to rebuilding a confidence process between citizens and those who, for a moment in their life, represent them in the representative democratic institutions. The second, that the media don't do their job. And the third, how we can ensure, in my view, we can ensure in making this platform a permanent tool, introducing as a part of the ordinary work of the European Union, the European institutions, consultation on the platform, without changing, keeping this platform, improving that, making it simpler, whatever, but keeping that, not, and also to ensure and follow up to one of the proposals of the citizens, which is to hold citizens' assemblies. So I mean, in my view, every year, as a contribution to the State of the Union debate in September, as we have consultation of the civil society, of the social partners, of the Committee of the Regions, of the Economic and Social Committee, we should organize at national European level this kind of consultation, using the platform, using the digital, and other means, so they can contribute every day, every year, the citizens' assemblies to the debate on the State of the Union. At midterm, we should have a much more organized process where the citizens tell the institutions at midterm how do you see things. These are perfectly possible, and this could be a very good outcome of the conference. It is clear that also, and I end up here, but it's important. I mean, for example, in the two countries that I know best, as the commissioner say, the country I know best. I got two countries which I know best. In one, they have finished the consultation of the national citizens already in November. It is clear that we take into account the result of the national debate. In another country, which I know best, they are still doing, I mean, we read that. So also to have some coherence, some consistency between what we do at European level and what we do at national level would help a lot for this kind of new democratic exercise, participation and consultation.
Thank you. That was a very comprehensive answer there. I'm seeing questions in the room. I'm all in favor of keeping the platform open, by the way. They should just improve the login process slightly. People trying to get in there. I think the next question, Laura, if you could just pass the mic over to Benny over here, or you could do like a group pass around, or yeah.
Thanks, Laura. Hi, I'm Benjamin, also with Alliance4Europe. First of all, I want to say that I very much, I'm excited about these 800 people. We are very much in the business of sort of finding these people, and they can be an avant-garde, and they can be really meaningful. But I think at the same time, we also have to concede the fact that as a mass participation exercise, this conference has probably failed. And the question is, when we talk about it, why do we keep talking about participation when in fact the really interesting thing about this thing is the informal or semi-informal institution that was actually created and that holds legitimacy in and of its own. There's a lot of people in there that are elected. There are a lot of people who have been chosen because they are really community leaders in their own right. And if this conference were to say, if they were to find the courage, as Omri mentioned, to just come into its own and say, no, we do not accept the dictates of some cloudy commission that sets the agenda for us, we give ourselves our own agenda. And we will not go apart until a constitutional convention is called. Who is to stop them? Who is going to seriously say, if you find a majority for this within the convention, who is going to say, no, game is over, go home, this is done, we'll do a report, and good luck next time? I mean, it's really about this this work that has been mentioned by the Spinelli Group and by you guys and by Brando before, of getting inside the convention and finding a way to really making it into something meaningful. And my question is, how realistic a prospect is this? Is this something that can actually be done? Or is this just something where we say, okay, no, maybe next time? Like, where do you see, is this really a historic moment of opportunity? Or is it a, Brussels exercise that, maybe in 5 years' time, we'll wait for the next moment?
Yeah, so I think, thank you, Benny. I think, again, this is sort of a question for the conference goers, and it sort of puts a pin on some of the things that you've mentioned. I see, Yannis, that you're also contemplating a response. Maybe, Sandra, Valeria, would you like to pick it up briefly, and then Yannis take a shot?
I don't have the same role as Sandro, so I can push for it. Sandro can make it happen. That's the big difference.
No pressure.
But I really think I was very skeptical until, as I told you, 1 month ago. And now I really see that this can happen. And I am part of one of the Trojan horse that might make it happen because of this very concrete request for shared competence in healthcare. It's very precise, very limited, but very clear. And it might be one of the couple of requests on the basis of which the parliament will go ahead. So I really think that also seeing the geopolitical context around us, and I believe and I hope that the parliament will not miss this opportunity to go for it. And what I'm sure is that only the parliament will make it. We can count only on the European Parliament for this because on the one side we have the Council, which is absolutely skeptical about the idea, even though, of course, the current French presidency is very correct in saying we will follow on whatever is the request that comes to us. And then the European Commission, not for the first time, play the honest broker, the observer. Yes, they are not going to be in the driving seat, and that's why we can count only on people like Sandro to make it happen.
So Sandro, will you make it happen? I think that's the question.
For me, it's clear. I already said it is clear that the conference must be ensure a proper, prompt, and adequate follow-up, which entails also treaty revisions. Not only it entails political initiative, legislative initiative, and also treaty revision. And I think that the Parliament, in this case, has got a right of legislative initiative, because Article 48 of the Treaty of the European Union gives also to the Parliament the power to initiate a review process. And I think that we have to push and we have to make sure that this happens during the French presidency, because if the French voters makes me happy, we will have the same president before and after 24th of April, and is the one who proposed the conference, because the conference was proposed by Emmanuel Macron in this La Sorbonne speech on the 28th of September 2017. And the conference was the proposal with which our list ended up its program, because my list Renaissance ended up with the proposal of holding this conference. It was our idea. It was Emmanuel Macron's idea, it was our idea. We are very happy that now it happens. So it is not our monopoly, but we are the beginning of this. And it is clear that we will do everything to ensure that to make it happen. Will it be possible? What are the obstacles? The obstacles are a good part of the government in the council, which actively also in the conference try to dilute, to water down the exercise, and to turn it a non-binding, non-committal exercise. Thank you very much. Good luck. See you in 10 years, as you said. And some political forces, both in the parliament and the national parliament. So the battle is, will we manage to go ahead? Will we manage also to build up a majority in the council? We don't need unanimity to launch the revision, the treaty revision, or not? That is an open political battle. I can assure you that I'm already fighting the battle. Then if we win, we will be happier together.
Thank you very much. So I saw a question here at the front, and I saw you there, and then another one here. So we have them lined up. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let me start by saying that I'm not an Athenian or a Greek, but a citizen of Europe. And I think we should all think in that way. We spoke about the conference for the future of Europe. It's a nice thing, but maybe it's a one-off. Maybe we will try to make it better or have another one. But what I like to remind people is that already in the treaty, we have Article 11.4, which is a participatory democracy tool. It's the European Citizens Initiative. So my proposal, trying to be practical, let's start today a European Citizens Initiative. We need 7 people. We run for 1 year. There are a lot of organizations here supporting the cause of a federal Europe. So, as the book says, time for a European federation. Let's make it a European Citizens Initiative. Thank you.
All right. Yannis, is that a road forward that you were considering?
Actually, yes, it's a tool worth exploring, not only for going for big constitutional changes. I like the idea. I will contemplate about it. By the way, it's a very, very big project. This initiative, I understand, requires 1 million signatures in order to oblige officially the Commission and the other institutions to react. And this initiative has also been used for other causes, animal rights, ecological causes, and so on. I believe this conference is a one-off thing. I don't see it being repeated in such an extent, because now we are on a kind of a constitutional crossroads. However, just to remind that there are already other tools of participatory democracy in the EU. In every piece of legislation that the Commission is proposing, there is wide consultation, at least with the so-called stakeholders. For instance, we propose something about artificial intelligence or trade or environment or public health. Also there, we consult with hundreds, literally, involved importers, traders, operators, and so on. They send us their feedback, and then it's up to us to analyze it and make something out of it. So this is a tool that works every day. I know it's boring. It does not concern the masses. If in my job we make a proposal, for instance, about the protection of health of plants, okay, of course, nobody cares to really look at this proposal, but there are 50 organizations in place. However, this conference could maybe remain as a standing tool when we debate big institutional issues, because big institutional issues will come up anyway. I mean, the no veto issues like the election, the European list for European Parliament. These things need to be brought back to the public. The public should be consulted again. Do we want 28 MEPs out of 700 to be elected on a European list, or do we want more? Why is this an issue to only be debated and decided by the Parliament? Why shouldn't it be an issue to come down to the European society, have a comfortable debate of 6 months, and decide precisely on that issue? So I think the conference could be reduced to a kind of standing conference on the future of Europe that would be regularly consulted on things which are institutional, which concern democratic functioning. And through this way, I think European people will come much closer to European affairs.
Okay, so that's a standing conference proposal. I think that's a relatively novel one, so that's a good one for the books. Would you like to come in? Maybe if you could say your name as well.
Yes, good evening. Thank you for organizing this event. I'm Vasil Tuhchev from European External Action Service, Human Rights Division. So I would like to bring the external dimension to the debate tonight. In particular, my question is, how do you assess the impact of the current crisis, such as the Ukraine crisis, the refugee crisis, on the mindset of the people in the conference of the future of Europe. Also, how do you assess the impact of the COVID crisis? How did it change the conference? And here I would like to make the link between the internal-external dimension of EU policy. And I'm here tonight because I like the veto in the council to fall as well. I see it in my daily work. It's not very efficient.
Can
so
only imagine.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. As one who used to come into EAS meetings myself, I can sympathize with the frustration in the room when council opinions are not really aligned on something, and you can kind of forget it a little bit. Yeah, I think just to maybe bring it back, Olivia, how do you consider that public opinion has shifted?
Well, I think the fact that the conference had been stalled because of the pandemic did not bring a stop to actually the participation on the forum. I mean, it did also saw like an uptake on, like, there were more topics and proposals submitted. So I mean, in terms of the discussions it installed, I do think it also created a more urgency to see that we want to accelerate on European cooperation in terms of European health policy, and that it's still okay. We were still like halfway with buying all the vaccines, but then we had to do everything nationally, and for that it was just a test of time. The conference was really at a lot of turning points also, and in crises that were facing the European Union. So I think it was still like a very interesting pulse way to keep a pulse on how the EU was dealing day to day on these issues. So for that, it was a very good meter of public opinion.
And I would like maybe to just attach another angle to your question and address it to Esther. There is indeed a link between the external and internal aspects of European democracy and how it plays out in the region. And in fact, we have seen this very well orchestrated playbook by authoritarian regimes against European democracy, whether it's through election interference, whether it's a legislative playbook of limiting civil society action. And we've seen Russian funding, we've seen other sort of extremist funding come in. And from your perspective, what needs to be done in order to switch that tap off, to just turn off that sort of stream of authoritarian action that has been just flowing into the European Union, making the life of the External Action Service very difficult, because when you try and do something in the External Action Service and Hungary says no, Greece says no, Spain says no, whoever it is, often it's for those reasons. But then also internally, why don't we have a European values instrument that is 10 times larger? What can we do to really switch this off from your experience?
I think we are in a very interesting time. Like Yannis was saying, it seems that history is accelerating, right? And we are seeing for the first time certain momentum for further integration. But what we have also seen with Russian aggression against Ukraine is that the European Commission has taken steps back from precisely the commitments to improve rule of law within the European Union. So sometimes I wonder if we follow this momentum to its logical next step, what is going to happen if we stop holding into account countries that actually have been passing legislation that has been inspired in Russia? We have seen foreign agents legislation not only in Hungary but tabled in a number of countries.
Can you give some examples just so
the foreign agents legislation, yeah, of course. So foreign agents legislation passes in Russia in 2012. Hungary picks it up in 2017. What is the Romanian government, Social Democrats, also tables, try to pass it, doesn't work. We have seen it in Slovakia, attempts. We have seen it in Bulgaria, same attempts. We have seen in Poland, same attempts. Anti-LGBTQ legislation like the one in Russia, we have seen it in Hungary. We are seeing that proposals in Poland. So my question is, if we, as federalists, and I am a federalist, and I really want a federalist Europe to happen, if we forget this agenda, we might end up in a pretty dark spot. And I think the added value of the European Union at this point in time is to secure that the world based order based on laws stays. So here's where I think that we have like a joint responsibility, federalists particularly, to make sure that this remains on the table and the European institutions don't compromise on that. And I really feel your pain. I was working, actually the way I arrived to civil rights within Europe was by having frustrating conversations in council about what needed to happen in the Middle East, and having Hungary blocking every kind of human rights statement possible. So I think we have to face those realities as well, and that we shouldn't forget that. So for that, we need Article 7 to happen. We need the enforcement regulation to be seriously taken into account. We need the Commission to start infringement proceedings against Poland and Hungary and countries not abiding by the rule of law. We need money to go to civil society in order to have not just a union, but a democratic union.
Yeah, that's a very important point. So we're gradually making our way towards the reception at the end. So just to keep you on there, I think Sandro, you will have to go, no problem. Just maybe a last question before. I think we have one here, right? The microphone is traveling your way. Full disclosure, it's also my sister, but an EU professional in her own right. So.
Thank you, sweet brother. My name is Inbar Price. I'm a reporter for Parliament Magazine. Thank you all for speaking today. My question, as someone who's learning a bit more about European federalism, is what are the main opponents and opposing ideas for this to happen? Is it the attachment to the sovereign state and the power that would have to, states would have to step back from for that? And maybe a quick follow-up question would be, is this something you expect to see within our lifetime? And perhaps, as Yannis said, given the acceleration of history, maybe in the earlier part of our lifetime?
So Sandra, if you had to really gamble before you go, like just put down 100,000 euros on this mortgage, what would it be?
It is a false dilemma. The issue of national identity, national dimension, and European federalism. It is totally false, totally flawed. Because the real issue is what does it mean in 21st century to be sovereign? First of all, what does it mean to be sovereign in general? And what does it mean to be sovereign in the 21st century? What is sovereignty? Sovereignty is, and I use purposely the slogan of the Brexiteers, sovereignty is to take back control. To take back control and to make things happen in order to change the reality for the common good. That is sovereignty. So it is clear that the only way for us to take back control of certain issues is to build up a sovereign Europe. Then, if you are in France, you say Europe souveraine et démocratique, because if you say federal state in France, they are Jacobins, they think that it's a centralized state in Europe. If you are on the other side of the Rhine, you can say we want a European federal state. You can put it in your government program, as in German they do. If you say federalism in Italy means respect of the diversity and respect of identities, as it is in Spain. So, I mean, it's really, but the issue of saying that in 21st century, to build up a sovereign Europe, a federal Europe, means to take away something from the nation state is totally false. It is to give back something to the member states. It is to give back something to the nation state. It is to give back something to the protection and promotion of your culture, of your tradition, of your identities. Even the issue of identity politics, to put in contradiction with the European integration, is false, because we are living in a century of empires, not of nation state. China is an empire. India is an empire. Brazil is an empire. The United States is an empire. Empire doesn't mean that they want to control us. Empire means that their size, the way they reason, the way they want to exercise influence is totally different in terms of scale, in terms of influence from the nation state. This is why I think that we can see it in our lifetime. So I put my 100 euro, and I thank you very much. We are supposed to end up at 8:15, so now I have to leave you. Thank you very much.
Sure. Yes. Great. So, thank you very much, Sandro, if you need to get going. Maybe Yannis, if you'd like to give us some closing remarks, and then...
Yes. I would bet my 100,000 euros that I would see a federal sovereign European state in my lifetime. Why? Because I see it from a historic perspective. We became an economic community in 1957. We became a European Union in 92. Only in the last 5 years, amazing things have happened, unbelievable things. Common health policies, common defense initiatives, the Conference on Europe. 60 up to 70% of our national legislation is transposition of European legislation. So we are already 60% federated. And of course, we have to remind everybody that federalism is not about concentration of power in Brussels. It's the principle of subsidiarity, the right thing and the right level. If we need to defend ourselves against China or Russia or United States or America or any big empire, yes, we need to be together. Then we need a federal action. When it comes to education, language, culture, local protection of environment, traditions, national flag, having a king or a queen as a ceremonial leader, of course this is a national thing. This will not contradict the federal idea. To the contrary, it will complement it. Thank you, and I appreciate very much the visit.
Great. Thank you very much, Sandro. I see that there is another question there at the back. If we don't mind, could you maybe just pass it down, maybe down through the rows? Oh, doing a personal delivery over there. Okay, so we can have this as our last question, just to take the temperature in the room. I think I'm seeing the movement in the reception area over there, so please go ahead and tell us your name, maybe.
Yes, good evening, everybody. I'm Roxanne. I'm president of the Young European Federalists in Brussels. Sorry. Hello. Good evening. I'm Roxanne. I'm the president of the Young European Federalists in Brussels, and I just want to stress that we did participate a lot on the Conference of the Future of Europe. We participate to the peer parliament session. We try to gather all the young Europeans there in Brussels to try to reach out to the different communities in Brussels, in Dutch, in English, in French. And if you have any ideas, we are on Instagram. We are on very many social network platforms. And if you are interested, you can just come to me, and voila.
Thank you very much. I mean, would you want to maybe add just what is your conclusion from all those things that you've done in the different parts of Brussels? Like, what was your main takeaway from engaging people?
I think that we were quite surprised because at the end of the day, governance speaking, mainly people, they were asking for federalism, which we were really happy about it, of course. When we ask people about their views on Europe and what they want about the else European policies and so on, we actually really felt that they have a lack of Europe, and they wanted to have more Europe to make it work better. So we had that. I also had to underline that on the lessons learned, it's really difficult to mobilize the public in this time. And it was difficult to find an audience, and I'm not very surprised of the 800 only people participating on the platform, because we need to absolutely mainstream the Conference of the Future of Europe in various tools and to make it also outside of the EU bubble. That's, I think, the main challenge.
Yes, indeed. Okay, we had just a last addition over here. If there's a way of just quickly getting to... Oh, no need? Okay.
I think the main takeaway of the evening is that we need to buy Yannis' book.
Yes, indeed. This was my next...
Involving everybody, and the work is extraordinary. Thanks everybody for being here.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Yes, thank you. Yannis, do you want to say any last word about the book? How can people find it? Where can they order it?
You can find it online. I have to confess the price so far has been quite high. It took me 3 months to negotiate with the publishing house. The current online price is 37 euros, which is quite prohibitive. But in a few days, hopefully even tomorrow, it will be dropped down to 20 euros. I insisted because I want this book to be bought by students, by ordinary people. Usually publishing houses lately focus very much on academic publications. Their target groups are professors, universities, libraries. This is why they bring the price very high. People started giving up on books, even the publishing houses. They know everything is moving online. So book is becoming a kind of luxury commodity, and I wouldn't like it to be like this. So I will try to keep the price down, order it online, and you can also buy it at the bookstore on Rue Froissart, this Librairie Européenne, which is close to Place Schumann. And there you can also find many other interesting books about Europe. I have to say, every time I go there, I get a little bit seduced by what I see, and I buy also many other things. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, bottom line is, buy it in a couple of days. Reception over there. Feel free to follow us on Instagram.